Dieter and Hutch alive and kicking. It's rookie minicamp week, our favorite week of the season, right, Jake?
Yeah, sure. A crucial week.
We'll get into that in a little bit. We got to start off the show. Let's just get right into this. John Lynch, because he does whatever Kyle Shanahan says, had to go on the Chris Sims Unbuttoned podcast. I'm sure Chris Sims has been bugging his buddy Kyle for months, if not years, to come on the pod. And eventually Kyle gave in and sent John Lynch to go do the show. And listen, John Lynch is just like the most affable dude on the planet. It was a decent enough interview, but there's some interesting tidbits in here that I think we should get into.
I agree. It's there's a reason they call him Captain America. He does it well.
Okay, we're just going to play the audio on this first one. There's a couple other ones that we'll talk to here, but this is John Lynch discussing a very close call, and I think this is informative in a very specific way we'll get into. This is John Lynch discussing a close call in the 2024 NFL Draft.
Fascinated by the draft. When you get a call from other teams, they're offering you a trade, the clock is ticking down. You don't have a whole lot of time to operate. How do you go about making those decisions and making those decisions quickly on if this trade is worth it, the value, and all that?
Well, thank God for computers, because I don't have that mind that can do all that in the head. But I mean, it's as easy as clicking, and then you have your trade chart, you have the league trade chart. There are some gnarly, like, close calls. Last year, in the fourth round, we took a receiver, Jake Cowing, and we were having trade discussions at that. So we got down to like a minute, 45 seconds. And then it was going to be Jake Cowing or a linebacker. And, Kyle and I like listening to our scouts and at this point, and so I'm like, Kyle, we got to go. And he's like, no, we got 45 seconds. So I said, okay, fellas, like, show of hands, like, who likes linebacker, who likes Cowing? And it was like really, really close, like right down the middle. And I'm like, Kyle, like, we're going. And he's like, hold on, we got plenty of time. And 30 seconds. And he goes, all right, like, here's why the receiver would be important. Here's why the linebacker. Let's another show of hands. And it's like, now there's 20 seconds. And then he goes, okay, one more time, throw him up. And like, I get the decision. I say, turn it in with like 7 seconds. And our guy, Justin Chabot, the scout, like, I give him a hard time because he's typing like this. It didn't make me like,
that's great.
And I think we went down to like 2 seconds and we got the pick in, and you can like forfeit your pick.
Right.
So,
right.
That was the closest call we've ever had. So that was a little hairy. And it's hard. I'm much more comfortable now. And it's like performing in front of 80,000 people, but the draft sometimes, like, your owner, your boss is sitting there and like, it's like, this idiot. Can you make a pick? You got 2 seconds left. Really? You came that close?
So John Lynch saying that it came down to the final 2 seconds to take Jacob Cowing. Wish they had that one back, huh, Jake?
Yeah. It's not exactly inspiring that it was like, we could go either way, or a linebacker.
Listen, I get it that you're in a situation where it's high stress. You're not going to feel #conviction on every pick, right? You're going to have to balance between some options. I get that part. That's fine. Here's the interesting part about all of this to me, Jake. One, Kyle saying, we have time. Like, that's interesting to me.
Right, the clock management being abysmal. The fact that they seek consensus so hard, it's like, here's the thing, like, I'm not anti-consensus.
We love consensus. Democracy is awesome.
It's important that you're all aligned and on the same page, and you have like a vision for where the organization is headed and where the player fits in. And they talked about, I think it was Josh Williams talked about like your vision for a player, like where does he fit in?
Mm-hmm.
The thing is, it feels like they seek that a little too hard. Like, they, instead of being like their top decision makers, are like, well, here we are the top decision makers.
Right.
Here's where we're going with this. They're like, and I understand you want to defer to the people who've been scouting these players forever, and I'm not saying don't do that, but I would say at the end of the day, it's your call.
Yeah.
Make a call.
Yes.
Like, have some conviction, to break up the mixed consensus, because you don't have consensus.
It's the fourth round, right? It's pick 130 something. Everyone's going to have an opinion because there's no right answer. There clearly is no right answer. It's not like Mikael Williams falls to you at pick number 11, and if anyone says anything different, they're going to come across as an idiot. Take that for what it's worth, ladies and gentlemen. My point is merely, I've been saying this now here, elsewhere, everywhere. John Lynch's lack of strength in the GM role is very interesting to me as we are now in year 9 of this situation. And that I was under the impression not that long ago that Lynch was in fact gaining more power in the GM role and that it was consolidating towards him. I still don't get the impression that it really has in a meaningful way. And when you have Kyle being like, no, we got time. We can talk this one out as much as we want. And you have John not being able to put his foot down on, hey, we got to make a pick, linebacker or guy. Like, this is not the time to be doing a straw poll. You should have done that well before the draft. I get that there are tough decisions to be made in the moment. Understand that you want everybody's input on it. But at some point, as you just said, Jake, like, who's the man?
It is a little
and there's no man
reassuring.
here.
It is. Well, that's harsh.
No. Like, I'm talking about the man. Like, there is
I know.
no person who is clearly in charge because Kyle doesn't want the responsibility. But ultimately, when push comes to shove, Kyle reminds everybody that he's still the man in charge. And yet he just doesn't take it.
Yeah, it's reassuring to know that they, get to times in the draft where it's like any of us doing like a fantasy draft where you're like, oh God, I guess I need a running back here. What's the other option? And then you're looking at it and you're like, I'm panicking. 5 seconds. So it just is a human thing, I guess.
Totally.
That they're doing that, which is nice to know. But it's also like, I've got a few questions. So it was between Cowing and, linebacker. Were you going to take Jordan McGee? Out of Washington, who I was a fan of.
You were a big fan of Jordan McGee. You liked Jordan McGee a lot more when he was a 6th, 7th round prospect before everyone
it
kind
was
of got
a little early in the 5th, but it wasn't damning. It was, and he went 4 picks after to Washington.
Yeah, he did.
But were you going to take like Tatum Bethune? Like one? Granted,
Maybe.
He went later, so I would assume not.
Maybe.
But I am curious who the linebacker was, because it's like you look at some of them, it's like McGee sort of fits that mold. Adefuan Ulofoshio, I'm butchering that name, went to Buffalo. Muasau to the Giants, like those sort of guys who are like athletic, undersized, speedy, rangy guys, sort of fit the mold that they went with this year. So I'm kind of curious.
Well, and we'll go to the grave not knowing, but I'm curious as to who the offensive player John Lynch said they would have taken had Mikael Williams not been there at 11. That is the other sort of revelatory bit of information from the Chris Sims Unbuttoned podcast.
So much was unbuttoned.
Unbelievable. It was like a Miami afternoon, just no buttons. And Lynch goes, and you have to take all this with a grain of salt because it is hypotheticals on hypotheticals. But Lynch, to paraphrase, said if Mikael Williams hadn't been there at 11, which of course they didn't expect him to be, they would have taken an offensive player. And Jake, I think that legitimately, I'll cop to it. The first name that came into my mind was a guy who went at pick 39 in Luther Burden, because I know that there was a lot of love for Luther Burden in that building, and that they never thought that they could really even get him at 43.
Yeah.
I think Burden might have been the guy. There's Tyler Warren, maybe a little bit.
He was the name that popped into my head first. I looked back at it, and it's like there's a lot of smoke around Kelvin Banks, and Lynch went on to mention that Mikael was only there because
Mickey
Kelvin
Loomis
Banks went to the Saints, which they only found out afterwards. It's also a little bit rare for him to explicitly shout out players unless he was interested. Like he did that with the Stanford corner when they drafted Ambry Thomas.
Adobo.
Paulson Adebo, who also went to the Saints.
Jesus.
Yes, Paulson Adebo.
The bit continues.
Right, who also went to the Saints.
Yes.
Which is sort of interesting. Again, maybe that's reading too much into it. But Banks was a name, but for me, Burden was the one that popped in my head. Warren feels like, I don't know. I'm just looking at the other first round guys. I don't necessarily think they would have drafted a tight end that high. the way that they prioritize the Kittle deal after the draft. And,
Not when Ross
Um,
Dwelley is available as a free agent. I mean, what would you need another tight end for?
exactly, Dieter. Exactly. Dwelly's back in the building. The crisis of tight end is solved. Gray Zabel, I don't think.
Too early.
I know he's an athlete, but I don't think they value interior offensive line that much, if at all. I mean, they drafted Aaron Banks in the second round. That's the earliest they've ever spent. They don't really spend in free agency.
Right.
I don't think it would have been a running back.
No.
I don't think they do that in the first round. Donovan Jackson, again, a guard. So you just look at the guys that went in the first round. Connerly is a guy that, like, maybe because
Yes.
he sort of fits them, and he went to the Commanders, who, like, again, similar thought process. I think that would have been way too early for Connerly, but again, this team doesn't care about whether something is too early.
I mean, yeah, if there's one thing that's been proven, both in good and what I think is going to be in bad this year, it's that they are on their own board, and their board is infallible. You know, one of the things too, I appreciate John Lynch being honest to whatever degree I can prove he's being honest. He did at least seem forthright, which says something. But you know, if you're just coming up with hypotheticals that could have it, you could make it sound like you're a lot better at this than you are. Like you could be like, oh yeah, well, we were planning on trading down and getting that first round pick that Atlanta gave up for James Pierce. Like you could say that. Who's going to stop you? Like, come on, John, you know, back yourself up here a little bit. You got to take it on the chin at work every day because you're not actually in charge. At least make it sound like you're really, really good when you get a chance to just make something up on the spot.
And he's like talking about Jed, who's like, you know, you got an owner looking over his shoulder. Like, does this guy even know what he's doing?
Well, that goes both ways, right? Because you got Jed tweeting through it like it's 2009, and you know he's at the Obama inauguration or something with the hashtags. It was a tough scene and unforgivable, frankly, at this point.
Listen, you know, I don't think we've talked about their draft process a lot. It does, to me, in general, feel like too much. Let's all be a one team, one
big kumbaya energy.
Yeah. There's a little too much of that for my liking. Where in certain moments, and you watch Howie Roseman. I mean, again, the Eagles clipped it, but like you watch some of that,
of course,
and he's like, we're taking a corner. We're going with this guy.
It just you can have hashtag conviction in moments because you've had those conversations with people, and I've explained this before. There has to be a point person. You have the scouting department over here. You have the coaching department over here. They're all going to have their reports. They're all going to have their opinions. As Matt LaFleur was telling the boys, like coaches a lot of times suck at this. Right? They want a certain type of thing. They're trying to fit for need. They're trying to fit for a specific scheme. They don't want to be challenged. Who wants to be challenged? Right? Who wants to be pushed outside of their comfort zone by getting a player that's going to force you to have to be a better coach? Like no one's active. Only absolute deranged people are constantly looking for like, I need that next challenge. That's some like real Instagram alpha male nonsense. Like that's not a thing. And then on the flip side, you have scouts who are always trying. They know that they're not going to be held accountable. And this is a big issue I have with the scouting community. Scouts are not held accountable for the guys that they get wrong. They're not, because somehow they have incredible job. I know exactly how. They don't make any money, so they have incredible job security. If you get past age 25 and the $25,000 salary, you just hang around forever. You're like the furniture of the entire complex. And earlier in that Chris Sims pod with Lynch mentioned something that we've talked about before. They just kept Trent Baalke's scouts, right? You just inherit, like that is, you want to talk about the deep state, like that's the deep state. Like scouts just stay with teams. And every now and again, you'll see right before the draft or just after the draft, a team clear house on scouts, right? And they'll go top down and they'll clear house. That happens like not as frequently as you would think. They do not when you have a new regime come in, right? New GM, new head coach. Typically, those go in tandem. You have a whole new coaching staff. You're typically going to have a dramatically different roster. You know what you don't have? A new scouting department, which is in many ways the reason that you're in the shitty situation to begin with.
Yeah. It is bizarre. It's such a disconnected part of the job. Meanwhile, like hiring is like the most crucial thing you do at the start of it.
Totally.
It's also something where it's like so much of the work scouts do is on the road. So it is a difficult thing to evaluate unless you like spend
are they scouting the scouts.
Right.
Yeah.
It's extremely difficult to be like, is this, well, he's out there, he's doing the job, but
Right.
and he's writing the reports, but you don't really know until you see guys pan out over a course of a few years whether they actually know what they're talking about.
And this is what frustrates me, is that I would say there's almost more accountability in the media space for getting a pick wrong if we're doing this amateur scouting nonsense. Though I would argue professional scouting, because you can become a sicko in the corner of the screen. Right. Semi-pro. Let's just call it semi-pro, and that's an appropriate fit for what we have. But these scouts don't seem to ever be held accountable for all the guys that they get wrong. But they do get all of the credit whenever a guy hits, whether it's George Kittle in the 5th round or Fred Warner. That is a very strange rubric for judging success, right? If you're scouting the scouts, I find it very strange that only the booms seem to be held against them.
I don't think it benefits anybody to be like, wow, this scout completely botched it. We listened to this fool who we're paying $40,000.
Well, no, I'm not saying that John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan should go to the dais at the end of the day and be like, yeah, well, our scouts suck, so what do you expect? Like, I'm not saying that, but I do think that there's far less turnover for a job that has an incredible amount of influence, regardless of what people want to think. And I look at where the 49ers stand right now. A lot of these picks, as far as I can deduce, were Robert Saleh just saying, this is a guy I like. I mean, Jed almost gave the game away with the tweet.
Reminds me of this guy we used to have.
Well, not just that, but also like, hey, let's do consensus, and then push come to shove, we're paying our defensive coordinator so much money, maybe we just give him what he wants. Like, that's part of his job. I'll say, I mentioned this on the last show, I want to say it again. I think it's vitally important here. Most years, the San Francisco 49ers have had to fully rely on their scouts, who I don't think are very good. Just full stop, I don't think they're very good. They have had to fully rely on their scouts because they have consistently been playing deep into the postseason, which means that the coaching staff, one, is getting poached a lot, and two, the guys who remain are taking interviews and also don't have a tremendous amount of time with the vacation that is necessary at the end of a season to put together reports. So it is a more limited base for you to go from if you're going to default to your coach's opinions on players, which again comes with its own pratfalls. Yep. So you've been going with scouting. We've seen how that's gone. Now, last year it went fine. Last year it went A-okay. And that was the first year.
Better than okay. They nailed it.
We'll see. But early returns are very, very good. I'll give you that. But compared to prior years, I mean, gangbusters. That's a 5-run grand slam right there. They made something up on the fly. They're playing like Finnish baseball. So, but that was also a year where John, to at least my knowledge, took far more control of the process. And it took, was very much kind of alpha mailing the scenario. They kind of went back to kumbaya this year. They're trusting the scouts, who my skepticism is well established now. You can decide if it's warranted or not. But they also did so many coaches' reports, from what I can deduce, where these coaches are just punching out. They put together a better draft guide. They're putting together Jake draft guides every day. Each of these coaches. Yeah. And when push comes to shove, who's getting paid more? Well, Kyle's getting paid more, and these coaches are getting paid a lot of money. And I know John gets paid well, but I think there are a couple of position coaches and certainly coordinators. Robert Saleh certainly gets paid more than him. So where do the decisions come from? It typically comes from a hierarchy of who gets paid the most. And I'm just very skeptical going into a year where it's like, man, you have a kind of a weak GM who has to get consensus on everything. You got Jed looking over everybody's shoulder. You have a scouting department that has been poached of all of its best talent over the years and hasn't really replaced it, in my opinion. I think they have some decent area scouts, but I really have some worries about the high end of the scouting department. And then you have coaches who are typically, you want their input, but you don't want their full say on these things, getting the full say. This process, and that's something you always talk about, Jake. You like to see how they do the process. This process sucks.
Because you can nail a pick and be wrong in getting to the selection. It's like the stuff that repeats. It's like as a bettor, like if you're gambling, it's about making like plus EV decisions.
Right.
Things that in general give you better value than if you were just saying, all right, I'm just going to randomly throw out some bets because I'm feeling it, right?
Right.
You have to have some sort of edge, some sort of advantage there that you're playing with to have a reason to pursue it. And I think when you talk about process, it's like, so, when you're evaluating the player, are you evaluating the player holistically? Like, who is this player in a vacuum? And then, like, who is this player for us? And then what are the concerns we have? Like, you have to evaluate everything, and then you have to go through, okay, what does the landscape look like? What is the value of this position in this draft? Who are these other teams hunting in this draft? Like, can we maximize value? And I
Right.
think they, get so focused on, like, especially at 11, they're like, all right, well, we're gonna put a lot into 11, and then they trust their scouts a lot on day 3. But it does feel like they get into round 3 and they just go with these conviction guys, which
Well, and
is a questionable. And when I talk about, and I just want to mention because of process, like, I don't think their entire process is flawed. I think they treat different rounds differently, which is a little bit questionable to me. And I
Right.
get that that's natural. You're gonna you do
higher
have to,
stakes, right?
you do have to treat each round a little bit differently, but it does feel like the ethos of the pick, especially in round 3, is a little flimsy to me. And there's a lot of supporting evidence to that.
So you mentioned the conviction. We've made a joke out of conviction, but this is the thing. They want consensus, right? It is difficult to find consensus the deeper you go into the draft. It's hard to find it at the top of the draft, right? So imagine how difficult it is when you have players with overt flaws, either off the field or on, right? The deeper you go, the more flawed they are. Otherwise, they would have been taken earlier.
Like,
So
yeah.
to find the conviction, second round, third round, very difficult to do, which is why I think the 49ers stick to a board that is so different than not just the media's boards, because those don't mean shit, or
Yeah.
our boards, because they don't mean shit. We're not drafting. We have opinions. Our opinions are well documented at this point. We'll find out who's right and who's wrong. But ultimately, we don't have a 33rd team that we're drafting for. So the proof is not in any pudding. It's just in results, and circumstances are going to dictate a lot of that, and we have no control over that. So it is merely to state that when they find somebody that everyone can agree that they like, they will overrate that player based on everybody likes him, as opposed to actually taking the player at their true value, which might have some disconnect or might create some angst because not everyone's going to see it the same way. The fact that you can find conviction is incredible, but that doesn't mean that that's the right player at the right spot.
That's the thing of, like, we don't have access to all the information they have, but I was still,
I'd
like,
love
on my
it. By the
board,
way,
guys,
Dieter and Jake, you can just send it to us. We'd love the
Right.
access.
we would. But, like, there's guys on my board that I was much higher on than most people, and I was still like, well, just because I have that sort of grade on him doesn't necessarily mean I'm taking him here, because I think most people value him a little later.
Right.
And you want to try and maximize that. Then you run into the thing of, like, all right, we're going to miss out on the guy because you're trying to maximize that. And I think they operate too much out of fear
Mhm.
of that happening. I would also say, like, for example, like, there's not a chance in the world everyone in the room agreed on Alfred Collins. Not a chance.
They shouldn't have. But I guess again we come back to this, and this is a guess. I don't have anybody in the room who can give me the full play-by-play here. But my guess is they went, "Oh, we got defensive end. Now we need to get defensive tackle.
Yep.
Let's look at our board. Who's our best defensive tackle? All right, talk to me about the kid from Toledo. Talk to me about the kid from Texas." And then they just sort of find something that everyone is sort of A-okay with, as opposed to, again, they're talking it out in the moment is all well and good, but you should be doing a final check on a decision as opposed to making the decision on the fly. And it's just, I don't think it's a very good process. It's one thing if it's you and me in a fantasy baseball draft, fantasy football draft, where it's like, dude, I did some prep on this, but ultimately half the guys on this team I'm going to cut anyway.
For sure.
And, it's a $40 league. I'm not going to be, running through. I'm not going to create an algorithm for, a $40 fantasy football league with my drunk college buddies. But by the way, I would with my drunk college buddies in baseball. That's a whole different story. But I mean, do you know who Ryan Gusto is? Because I sure as hell do. It's too much, and frankly, I need to tone it down.
I'm
My
worried.
point was
I'm worried.
merely,
You've got children, Dieter. Come on.
I know, and if they want to go to college, Daddy needs to win the fantasy baseball league with a full $2,000 on the line, Jake. But if you're trying to figure out in the moment, if it's all just by the seat of your pants and you're just sort of taking a temperature of the room, you're going to take perhaps the least flawed prospect as opposed to the best prospect, right? Like there is some genius in the crowd, but also there is a path towards safety with the crowd. And safety, which obviously they didn't take until later in the draft, but the idea of safety on top of insularness is just not very good policy on the overall. And I think it could be very well fixed if there was just a decision maker, if there was somebody who was just unquestionably, unimpeachably in charge, that they can put their foot down. And I know that technically Kyle Shanahan is that guy, but he does not act like that guy until it is nut crunching time, in which case then he starts acting like that guy and kind of mucks up the process. So either fire John Lynch or enable John Lynch. Like, I mean it. Fire him or enable him. It has nothing to do with this draft and the players that he took. We'll find out if they're good or bad or not. But I can't. The process had some big red flags about it going in. And I think all of them, at least in my eyes, have been confirmed. That they just. This kumbaya BS, the best teams in football don't do it. Eric DaCosta isn't flying by the seat of his pants wondering, what do you guys think? What do you guys think when they're up on the clock, right? They've had this thing gamed out, and they know what they're going to do. Brett Veach doesn't ask questions at the end of it. I mean, even Jim Harbaugh, who is unquestionably the boss with the Chargers, lets his guys do their job. He stays out of it, and he understands that coaching is a very different thing than talent evaluation.
Yeah. I watched Sirianni during the Eagles draft, and he's like literally got his feet kicked up.
Yeah,
and just like texted.
I mean, dude's neutered day to day, no matter what. And I believe in giving your coaches an opportunity to get their say in, but those are conversations that cannot be happening in the moment. Those are conversations that I like this guy, Saleh likes this guy. #conviction. I find the whole process that the 49ers had during this, as far as I can tell, to be less than ideal. That's the only way I can say it. And I said it before the draft. I'll say it again after the draft because nothing has changed in my mind with the information that's new. Either empower John or get rid of him. And if you're wondering why John would be the first to go if this team doesn't get above 500 again, this is why. This is why. Because he's in a no-win situation for himself. And I think he plays into it a little bit. I think that there were plenty of opportunities, and I look back to the 24 draft and him taking on a more in-charge role. He could have maintained that. He could have taken that a step further. He didn't. He came back to this sort of how's everyone feel temperament, and I can appreciate that. It makes him a good person, but I don't know if it makes him a good GM.
Yeah. Listen, I'm not sure I feel as harsh about Lynch, but I do agree that there is a little too much kumbaya going on. One other thing separately I wanted to mention is Albert Breer was talking about the Michael Williams pick and piece, and it's not really anything revelatory, right? But it is interesting that, when they had Williams in, I think for his 30 visit, and they asked him like game on the line, like third down, in the Super Bowl, who do you want? I mean, where do you want to line up? If you're Michael Williams, where do you want to line up? Third down, you got to go get it. And he said over the guard, which I think is telling both of his familiarity there, his flexibility, and also how they might want to use him, which is why today I was watching Arden Key and Charles Amenahu back in 2021, which it's unfortunate that it's hard to go back to 2021 because they don't really let you get the all 22 there anymore.
Should we have saved it on some reel-to-reel tape?
We absolutely should have. Absolutely should have.
That's on me. That's on me. I'm the one who keeps the digital archive over here.
They had it, and they have it for some games, but not all of them. It's very weird.
That's brutal.
They didn't have it for the 49ers games. But I do think I
can see if the European edition has that. Sorry to go behind the scenes.
I bet it does. I bet it does. The Europeans get a
little Tor, a little Onion, and a little VPN might get it for us.
Yeah. But I think it's when you look at Williams and you look at how they want to set up their pass rush. I watched Eric Armstead. It was like Samson Ebukam, who was like a whole bag of nothing for the entire time he was here.
Yes, he was.
He was just like the most rotational of rotational.
It was the only
edge
bag
rushers.
he had, the bag
But
of nothing.
played like every down, and they would
Yeah.
have him and Arden Key and Armstead and Bosa, and they'd have stunts running around, and Bosa would run free, and Key was a menace in that one
Yeah.
year, and it got him paid in at a couple different spots, and then Amenahu was even better. Amenahu's like the one guy that like properly set the edge, could rush from a number of positions, and didn't even have the same level of power that Mikel has, which is
Right.
like, if you want to watch something that's like sort of similar to what they're hoping for, go watch like Amenahu in 2022, who was wildly underrated for his entire time.
Well, not when Kansas City got their hands on him. They paid him a tremendous amount of money. And more contemporary example would be Yetur Gross-Matos, right? That's in theory what they wanted to do with Yetur Gross-Matos. Oh, we can slide him in, NASCAR package. I don't know. Is the Gold Rush? I know Greg Papa's been trying
Also,
to make
Drake Jackson's still there, and he's apparently he's going to be wreaking havoc, he says.
I'm rooting for
I
Drake
hope.
Jackson.
Yeah.
Pleasant
He's a
gentleman.
good dude. I love talking to Drake, but like, you got to get on the field to do stuff.
Can't help the club in the tub. That's a Larry Krugerism right there. Let's do a quick pocket watch on Brock Purdy. He is, in fact, still poor. Moving on. Rookie minicamp. What do you want to see? Last year, rookie minicamp, the main two takeaways I had were that Ricky Pearsall could really whip it, and that Drake Nugent had some serious pop in those hands. Not a lot. By the way, I think our best video ever is still the Drake Nugent, save for our dalliances and play-by-playing. Our best video ever was our rookie minicamp takeaways last
We're
year.
just talking about the Nuge.
Just talking about the Nuge.
On top of the stadium, which has a...
Were we on top of the stadium, or were we just next to Michael Mina's wind tunnel restaurant?
Unclear.
Who's to say?
Yeah. It's impossible to remember. What I want to see...
Yeah.
Few things. I want to see Nick Martin, just how he moves. And I want to see, what is Marquise Siegel? What are you, man? Like,
yeah.
What do you... I mean, we're not going to get to see contact, so we're not going to see much, right? Kind of depends. But like, does he move the right way? Like, does he have a feel, or is he just sort of standing around hoping nobody notices him and then triggering downhill when it's obvious?
Specifically, you want to see Marquise Siegel almost get into trouble a couple of times for being so quick with his decision making that he almost tackles somebody. Like, that would be what you'd want to see.
I want to notice him.
Yep.
And that's something that maybe that's like a pretty lazy way to critique.
I don't think
you watch Kansas State,
best you can do.
And listen. I watched him have a pick six against West Virginia.
Oh, wow.
Which was a nice play, and you saw the speed there.
Yeah.
But there's like a lot of times where he's just sort of floating out there, and he's like always waiting for contact like 8 yards after the line of scrimmage, and then running with it because he can. But I don't know. I want to notice him out there.
I mean,
will Curtis Rourke play or throw the ball, or is he probably not? I'm guessing probably not.
No, I mean, I think that the PUP is almost certain at this point. Which, you know what, kind of a clever way to go about it, legitimately. Like, I got no problem with that. So first, I won't be there. I'm going to be at a wedding in St. Louis this weekend. So it's Jake riding solo. You're all in big trouble. He's going to bust out some spreadsheets and stuff. It's going to be disgusting. But
I don't know about all
but
that.
Michael Williams' hands, you just want to see suddenness, strength. You just want to see something that looks different, right? When we watch one-on-ones, and I don't know if they'll even give us one-on-ones, probably not.
I don't even know if they're allowed to do contact yet.
Right. Well, even in drills, you just want to see something that feels separate. Like, you watch Nick Bosa go through a drill, and it's just obviously very different than everybody else. There is it sounds different functionally.
Yeah. With defensive line guys, you want to see a coach holding the bags. They've got like forearm.
Yeah.
I forget what they're called, but they're holding them right here.
Yeah.
You want to see a coach go, oh God. Like, just get right. And it's actually never a coach. It's always like an intern.
Yeah. You want to see some 170-pound intern have his shoulder dislocated.
Yeah. Or
which is in general what we want to see. But specifically for Michael Williams, that would be really good.
Yeah, I remember one year the year that Jimmy wasn't allowed to play. There was like one guy that like his job was just to hang out with Jimmy while he was like on the side field.
That's great.
You get some funny jobs when there's like some weird dynamics going on because they're like, well, we don't have enough people, so this is your job now. You're the Jimmy whisperer.
He just kind of stood and stared at us as we turned around in the stands to look at you, and they're like, "Don't look at him." It's like he's right there. He's your.
That was a really funny offseason.
That was a great offseason. I preferred that one infinitely to this past training camp where the Niners decided we're not going to do this. That was fun and in no way a harbinger of things to come. I mean, just going down the list here, you want to see Alfred Collins look deliberate, I think would be a nice way to put it.
Is he going to be out there?
I don't know.
I guess that's what I want to see.
Another good question. I would like to lay eyes upon the boy. Yes, that would be
you know, honestly, I mean, the most obvious thing I'm excited for is CJ West.
I mean,
because that is
the one with the least questions.
Michael and him are the only two picks. I am literally like almost certain that they will work out to some extent. They are going to be good NFL players.
Right.
So I want to see. I was just watching more CJ West today, man.
It's always a good time.
It makes me feel like John Gruden. I'm like, look at this kid, man.
Yeah, this guy gets me amped up, man. It's got me feeling nicey.
Look at that wiggle. Look at that burst off the line, man.
Look at him surf the wave, man. Let me tell you something about this guy, man. This guy would fit well at the Pro Bowl back at Aloha Stadium. Jordan Watkins.
So much better.
Sorry.
Your Gruden is so much better.
Thank you.
It's not even close. Yeah, Jordan Watkins. I want to see how he runs.
Are you a thing?
Yeah,
like there's a legitimate chance that we never hear about Jordan Watkins again. Like there's something very Milford man about his game, or at least his energy right now, which could be a very positive thing.
Yeah, there is some optimism in terms of route running. Like he's got a firm step. I don't know if he's snappy, but he's got sharp. Plants his foot hard in the ground and cuts.
A Jawan Jennings, if you will.
Yeah, he's not like I wouldn't rate him as like a top 5 route runner in the class by any stretch, but like he gets his foot in the ground and he is decisive, and that's something I appreciate, especially with the upside of the speed. I don't know if those two things always convert in terms of like the quick step out of the break, but I'm excited to see it.
I don't think we'll see or learn anything about Jordan James. Running backs are very difficult to evaluate in this circumstance. Everybody's extremely difficult to evaluate.
We won't know anything about Jordan James until preseason game number 1. Probably.
I mean, really, it might even be 3. Like,
I don't know if we're actually going to learn anything. He's probably going to be exactly what's offered, which is like solid.
Yeah. Sigel, you mentioned Connor Colby. I don't know. Sometimes you can see a little something in drills that makes you feel okay.
I do want to see some of their undrafted free agents.
Who is atop that list for you?
Drew Moss. I want to because he's just got a build where his like upper half is just like this, and it kind of cracks me up. And also, I think he's got quick feet. So
yeah,
I want to see the burst off the line with some of those guys, and I'm curious to see who vomits first, because I will guarantee you, even in rookie minicamp, you always get a guy that's going to throw up.
Sebastian Valdez will be interesting. I would like
to.
No, yes, entirely. I'm not in any way implying that Sebastian Valdez is it. But again, I go back to the film and I just go, "There's something there. There's something there. I don't know what it is, and it might be nothing, but I want to see it. I just want to see it. I want to lay eyes on it."
My prediction is he's on the practice squad for 2 years.
Yeah.
And year 2, maybe year 3 gets in a game and you go,
You want to know You want to know what I'm really excited about, Jake? This is a sicko deep cut. I'm excited for everyone to think that Isaiah Nair is really, really good after rookie minicamp. That is my prediction, that I'm going to come back to the Bay Area and that everyone's going to be like, "Did you see Isaiah Nair? He looks incredible. He's unbelievable." And we're going to get the hype machine's going to get rolling. They're like, "Oh man, Lynch did it again." And then we'll get to training camp and he's going to drop his first 17 balls and get cut. That's my guess.
And Fred Warner is going to commit a war crime. Folks, something that doesn't get talked about enough. Fred Warner, one of the most level-headed, intelligent guys I know, like very thoughtful. Seems to be like a very caring dude for his family and other people off the field. On the field, especially in training camp, Fred's a dickhead.
Oh, he's the
He
worst.
is. And I'm not trying to be funny or harsh.
No.
And he does it intentionally because it's like actual leadership is like being.
It's what Draymond
ass.
Green thinks he's doing.
You have to do a little bit of that because otherwise it's like if you don't set the tone in training camp, like you need somebody to be like, we're going to be violent. We're going to like, you have to remember this is a violent game. We're not just out here for fun and all on the same team. Like this is where you actually get to practice. It's the only time. And I'm going to hit you harder than I should hit you.
Mm-hmm. And there was I can't remember who told the story. It was kind of a fringe running back receiver, played for the Panthers. And there's a story about how he is in, very early parts of training camp, if not like a mini camp. And again, apologies for not knowing the name. And it circulated on social media. And he kind of makes a guy miss. He makes another guy miss. And he sees out of the corner of his eye Luke Kuechly coming his way. And Luke Kuechly just sends him into the nether realm. And they're on the ground, and Kuechly's like, I'm sorry I hit you, but I had to teach you a lesson. We don't do that kind of thing at minicamp. And this guy's like, a moment before that, I was like, man, ain't nobody can touch me. I'm the man, this and that. And all I replied was, yes, thank you. Like that's, and that is a thing.
And Thomas Davis were so violent. They were both brilliant and also would just destroy. I was watching the 49ers in 2021, 2022, and you're like, they had Greenlaw, season Fred Warner, all out there.
That's
Insane.
a tone. That's a tone. And I think it's vitally important, and it's a long ways away. So nothing at rookie mini camp or even OTAs is going to reach this level. But particularly when you consider how just lazy, it was a lazy training camp last year.
It was bad. It was really bad, and not enough people, I think, were acknowledging that. And I don't like to.
I just think everyone wanted to be like, oh, they're tired. They're going to ramp it up. And they never ramped it up. They never ramped it up.
Yeah. This is patting ourselves on the back, which I try to avoid doing. But like, really, I don't think enough people were like, we were stating from the start, like, there's like not a lot of juice here.
No juice.
And like, no one wants to like admit that because you're sort of admitting you're going into like a lost season when you do that. It's not necessarily a lost season, but it is like,
it can go both ways.
The energy's not right. And it wasn't. And that's because you didn't have guys out there. Mm-hmm. And again, like you can't have guys not practicing when Shanahan constantly talks about how important it is.
Right.
It's the only time you get to sharpen yourself, and no one's out there. And there's just like second teamers and third stringers, and your third stringer or your second team guys are your third string guys, and your guys now starting are your backups because you haven't replaced anyone. So like it just wasn't a serious training camp because they didn't have the right guy.
It's a system that's predicated on timing and accuracy in not just the quarterback, but also running routes, blocking, all these things. And when you are constantly playing with a half squad, it's like a split squad spring training game, except baseball is an individual sport that masquerades as a team sport. And football is the ultimate team sport in which you can win without any great individuals in a sense. Like the power of friendship can win in football. And there's some college teams that maintain this every year. To not have had any continuity, to not have had any real practice time, legitimate practice time, to the point where, and then all the extracurricular BS, but they didn't practice with Christian McCaffrey and Brandon Ayuk once, right? George Kittle was in some days, out some days. Deebo Samuel out some days, but he came into camp great, right? All that. Like offensive line, Trent Williams just wasn't there. Not that he ever really is there, but you didn't even get the perfunctory like one day a week from Trent Williams where you could really ramp it up. Defense was banged up to all hell. I mean, D Winters, it's like, hey, here's your shot to go take a job. And he's like, hold on, I got to dislocate my shoulder real quick. Like that, it was a constant string of the only thing that we learned every day was who didn't practice. And so what we never saw was the San Francisco 49ers.
And
But
the entire time it was just the Ayuk saga, and just that wears on you. I don't
Correct.
care whether you know it's going to get done or not get done, and no one actually did,
Yeah.
including the parties involved. So you're just going, this is really uncomfortable and draining for a team that's like tired before the season started.
right. And then they come out against the Jets and they got a whole bunch of false confidence.
Yeah. So I guess what I'm excited to see is some semblance of a practice, maybe.
Maybe. But to go back to the Fred Warner thing real fast before we wrap it up, like leadership and excellence is vitally important to this team. I don't think that they lack it in any way, shape, or form. I think that the Brock Purdy situation getting wrapped up sooner rather than later would help, but it is not an issue until July because he's showing up to work, and he'll show up to work in July too. I don't think it will be an IU.
He lives here. What is he going to do? Hang out in Santa Clara? I've lived down there. Not too much going on. Not to rag on Santa Clara. It's nice enough.
Yeah, I mean,
But-
you can hit Santana Row only so many times.
Yeah, what are you going to go to Bolero?
And that's our football show. Can I quickly, Jake, do a? Yeah, I've rambled on enough on this one, but can we get in 1 minute of Dieter's? This is Dieter's NHL draft guide.
Oh, God.
Okay, don't oh God me, Michael
Oh,
Misa.
no, I can't wait.
Okay, Michael Misa. Sharks got the number 2 overall pick. Okay,
Right, and they're supposed to. Well, the defenseman's like the number 1 guy, right? But I don't know if people overvalue offensive players. So
Well, I think Schaefer, who is the defenseman, is going to go 1 overall. Number 2, and it is unquestionably the number 2 prospect, is this kid named Michael Misa, who's granted exceptional status in the OHL. Trying to figure out a fair comp. I kind of like John Tavares, exceptional status, high hockey IQ, real great understanding of spacing, prolific scorer, though not necessarily both goals and assists. This guy looks like a perfect second line center to Macklin Celebrini, and I think that'd be a win because it might push Will Smith out to the wing full time. I think that could win. They still need to get a right-handed shot defenseman. I think that they can get one of those later. You take, I don't know if they have their second round pick still, but you take another draft pick and whatever the Stars pick ends up being, and you move up. There's this kid from Seattle. He's a Czech kid. Forgive me. I'm not even going to try to pronounce his name, who looks unbelievable. So that would be my Mike Greer. That's my plan. You take Misa, you get the other center, you're set at center for the rest of your existence. You already have enough power forwards, and then you come back.
Second round pick. So
They do.
Does appear that way, and they've got a second first rounder. They've got
Yeah, they do. That's what I'm talking. That's the Stars pick.
28.
Yeah, so that's who did they
And
trade
they've
for?
got
That was the Granlund pick.
Second rounder too.
Okay, you take all of those and you move up to like 13 or 12, and you hope that the kid from Seattle, the right-handed shot defenseman, comes your way, because then you have what I legitimately, and I'm not a homer. Trust me, I'm wearing a Maple Leafs hat right now, for Christ's sake. But like, then you might have legitimately a perfect prospect pool, because you have the goalie. Askarov is kicking ass in the Calder Cup playoffs right now. You have a ton of left-handed shot defensemen of all shapes and sizes. You have power wings. I think you probably could stand to use another high-end goal-scoring option on the wing, but you already have your 200-foot center. I think Smith can turn into that guy on the wing. A little small, but he's small. He's going to be small at anything. And then now you have 1-2 center. You have all your wings. You have your defensemen. This could be it. I think 26 is the year they start making a push. In 27, it is on for the Sharks. And that's the other things portion of Dieter and Hutch, a 49ers and other things.
We haven't done enough other things. So
well, I legitimately got asked by a couple of people on Twitter and in a couple of spots, like, hey, what do you think about the Sharks situation? I'm like, boy, do I have thoughts.
That's all he's been thinking about.
Kinda. Jake will be your man on the ground for 49ers minicamp. And if he didn't know that already, he knows it now. Rookie minicamp. And I'm excited to see what you garner from the streets of Santa Clara.
I'm going to be out there. I'm going to be out there practicing with the boys.
Your opportunity to be the punt returner is nigh. I mean, that kid from Montana's got nothing on you.
Bergen out there. Excited to see him, whatever he is.
You know, it would be really bad if Junior Bergen was dropping punts.
Well, that's the thing is I was trying to I'm putting together the extended version of the draft guide.
Yes.
It's just 49ers prospects.
Right.
Which I'm shooting to be out this week.
Yes.
And it's like there's no all 22 tape of Junior
No.
Bergen. So it's like I'm just going to have to write a very short eval on him, which is that he is a punt returner. And whatever else we get, we'll see.
Yeah.
Because I'm not going to give you a fake eval off of just highlight clips. So,
I mean, it'd be pretty cool. Be pretty cool if he was just highlight clips, but that's not really how this works. That's not how we work. We'll talk to you in the next one. Jake will talk to you this weekend.